Hi, everyone, and good evening. Welcome to the Princeton Review's webinar, Back to School Guide to College Admissions. We are really excited to have you here this evening. My name is Anna, and I am with our national marketing team, and I will be introducing our guest speaker for this evening in just a few moments. But I will be here throughout the entire night to help with the webinar. But before we do get started, I just wanted to go over two quick housekeeping tips for you, all of you that are joining us on the call this evening. First of all of your lines are muted. So if you do have a question, and we really do hope that you have lots of questions for us this evening, please go ahead and use the question chat box on your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll be fielding as many of those questions that come in tonight as possible. So please, again, send them all in, even now. If you have a couple and you don't want to forget them, send them on in now, and we'll do our best to get to all of them this evening. The second housekeeping tip I wanted to let you all know about is that this session is being recorded, and everyone that attended this evening will get an email with that recording link about 24 to 48 hours after tonight's session. So feel free to take notes, as many as you need to. Otherwise, feel free to just sit back and relax and listen to all of the great information and tips that we do have to share with you this evening in regards to college admissions. So without further ado, I am going to hand it off to our guest speaker, our very own Lisa McLaughlin, our in-house expert on college admissions. Lisa, welcome. How are you?
Fine. Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. And we are going to spend the next hour or so talking about your back to school guide to college admissions. So I'm really excited to be bringing this to you. I'm actually in Austin, Texas, which is where our operational headquarters are for the Princeton Review, but I am actually based in California. So little, different knowledge there, being the California girl in the Princeton Review group. So I've got a lot of great information for you. And I am the Director of College Admissions Outreach here at the Princeton Review. And a little bit about me, so you can kind of understand who this person is on the other end. Anna, if you want to go to the next slide. So I'm going to actually ask a couple of polls. And actually, if you want to do the poll first, Anna, and then we can go through a little bit of who I am, that would be great.
Yeah, so we got the first one up, and it is launching right now. And so we just want to know where you are from. And so if you can go ahead and just click on the area of the country that you are coming to us from this evening. It looks like, Lisa, we have the majority of folks joining us from the Northeast. And we do have folks from the South and the West, mostly from the Northeast.
Okay, that sounds
Northeast,
great.
Number one Northeast, and 23% from the West, actually. So there you go.
Great. Okay, sounds good. And then actually, if you want to actually put that second poll up as well, related to who we have here. So it's always nice to know if you're the student or parent. We sort of want to know. So I know some of you are sitting together, but if you can kind of put what best describes you, if you're a student or parent, that would be great, and we can have that information as well. And then Anna will share with us that.
Yeah, we have about 74% saying they're the student and about 27% the parent. So
okay.
Welcome everybody.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so a little bit about me as far as who I am. So I have about 20 years of experience in the field of college admissions counseling, and I was a reader for the University of California, San Diego, and have a lot of knowledge going through what it takes to get admitted to the selective schools and the more holistic process of admissions. And so I'm definitely going to bring that knowledge to you, because it's not just about the UCs, but it's about a wide variety of other schools as well. I have been with the Princeton Review just this year, but prior to that, I was an independent counselor. I was also a teacher. I worked as a college readiness coordinator. I've worked on both sides of the desk in college admissions and high school counseling. And so I'm bringing with you that breadth of knowledge and a lot of different information. I'm now a national trainer. I speak on lots of different college admissions topics and trends, and I'm really excited to do these monthly webinars for the Princeton Review. It's actually going to take place on the first Tuesdays of every month, which is, why you're here now. So make sure you stay tuned to that. You do have to re-register every month for our webinars. Next month, I think we're going to be focusing on extracurricular activities. So we're really going to dive deep into helping you all to develop your resume. So I hope you'll join me for that. I also wrote lots of articles for the LA Times papers and actually the Orange County Register down in Southern California. So, was really staying on top of all the trends and analyzing that information. And, today I'm still a college advisor to hundreds, if not thousands of families. So lots of different information for you. As far as what we're going to talk about tonight, if we can go to that agenda. So what is really important when we're thinking about going back to school and, you're now, it's after Labor Day, you're all starting school, there's lots of decisions that can still take place in the next couple of weeks that could actually end up affecting your candidacy when you end up applying in your senior year down the road. But what I want you to think of is that, there's obviously an application file that eventually, when you apply, that's what the admissions officers are going to be going through. So they're going to be thumbing through all of this information. And so you want to really, think ahead to what it is that's going to go into that file, and then you work towards building your case for admission. And so the way that I'm going to go through this tonight is I'm going to analyze that application file for you, so you know what that entails. And then I'm going to talk about what grade level advice is going to help you to just be the absolute most competitive candidate you can possibly be, and give you lots of tips to help you to really get that case. And then talk to you about the Princeton Review Edge that we can provide you, because we have some amazing college admissions counseling services that I really want to make sure that you know about. Yes, we do test prep, obviously, it's how a lot of you hear about us, but we actually have some excellent college admissions counseling services that I want to make sure you know about. So let's go actually to our next poll, Anna, which is, put that on here.
Yeah, we have, what is your graduating high school class year? So if you guys can go ahead and answer that. And I am just gonna, I think we're having a little bit of some technical difficulties with this screen. I'm just gonna quickly check it out. But Lisa, we have about 59% class year 2019 and about 39% of 2018. A nice,
okay.
A couple 2020s and very, very little 2021.
Okay, so I'll make sure that I definitely, because I have information for middle school and ninth grade as well, but I'll make sure that we, I fly through those a little bit quicker so we can go deeper into the junior and senior year. But even though you might have siblings that want this information, I'm sorry about the screen, y'all. I can see that there's kind of some things going on here. Okay, so let's see. For the next slide, if you can go to the college application file, let's sort of start to go over this. So what goes into the college application file? So when you're a senior in your senior year, some of you know that you're in the absolute thick of it right now. These are the pieces that are going to go into your file, okay? Not for every college, but for most colleges, right? You have the normal application form, and that's going to have biographical information on there, right? The college is going to want to know, who the parents are and where they went to school. They're going to want to know if you have siblings and where they are in their educational journey and whether or not they went to school. And why would they want to know that? Well, they're trying to figure out your background. They want to know, are you a first-generation college student, or did your parents, finish college, or did your brother or sister go, and where did they go? Where did they attend school? They're going to ask information about, your academic area of interest. They're going to ask information about your activity list and what you're involved in, and we're going to talk about that in depth later. So the basic biographical pieces, that's always part of it. Every college has that. Most colleges are also going to ask for an official transcript that's usually going to come from your guidance office, your counseling office, or maybe you have a program called Naviance or something like that that you'll go through your high school in order to send that officially. A lot of colleges are now asking for self-reported grades, and so they don't necessarily ask for that transcript, but what they're going to do is ask for you to actually list out all the classes that you take and the grades that you got in those classes, including your senior year classes. They're going to ask for a list for that. And I can see that Anna's trying to figure out the screen. I apologize to you all for that. They're also going to have information about your test scores that are going to be officially sent through the testing agency, whether it's the College Board or ACT. That's going to go into your file. That's also self-reported information. Most colleges, the majority of the colleges, are also going to have very specific essay prompts that the student needs to answer. So there is a personal statement that usually is, just like it says, a statement of your person or your personality, and that's where you really help that application to come to life, okay? And most colleges now, and I was just talking about this today to a group at the Princeton Review, but most colleges now, there's sort of this myth, right, that it's one main essay that you have to write. And I have to say that, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, and especially over the past decade, I cannot believe how many essays students actually need to write now. It's far more than just a personal statement. And so you will have to write supplemental essays. And, you know, if you're taking notes at home, something that, you know, I would say that you want to really think about is you're often going to be asked about an academic area of interest that you have. A lot of colleges don't care necessarily if you declare a major, but they do want to know what your interests are. And so we're going to be talking about how to sort of work backwards to really show what your interest is, because you can sort of do some things in high school to kind of cater a lot to that response. They might also ask why you want to go to that specific school. And that's why in high school it's important for you to really research colleges and get to know what your interests are. They're going to often ask about an extracurricular activity that's been meaningful to you and why it is that it's meaningful, like what's made that your passion. So there's lots of different essays that colleges ask. Not all colleges ask the same things. It sort of varies throughout, but that's important to know that is definitely going to go into the file. The smaller the school, the more selective the school, the more essays you're going to have to write. Okay, so that's something to think about as you're moving ahead. Teacher recommendations and counselor recommendation is usually also a part of the file. For the teacher recommendations, it's usually 2 academic teachers, and we're going to kind of talk about how to get the right teacher to write those recommendations. And then there's also optional components, and that might have to do with a portfolio, depending if you're, you know, applying to a music program or art or something like that. Some colleges are actually asking now for a copy of a graded essay, and that kind of might sound a little strange to you, but more colleges are moving to that. They want to see how you've been taught writing throughout school. They want to see your analytical skills apart from, you know, what you're showing in your personal statement. So that's something that sometimes is optional. Different interviews, auditions, and things like that can also be part of the process. So when you're thinking about the file, what a college is doing is that they're looking at these pieces in order to make an academic review of who you are academically. What are you going to be like when you're in the classroom? An extracurricular review, meaning, well, okay, so you go to school when you're in college, you're in class actually the smallest amount of time. If you live on your campus, you spend more time outside of the classroom than you do in it. So they want to know, you know, what are you going to be like when you're not in the classroom? They're also doing a personal review. So they're going to read your essays. They're going to read what it looks like. And the main thing is that they're fit. Okay, so, you know, what are you going to offer them? What are they going to offer you? And is there, you know, a nice match there? That's something that colleges are looking for. So we're going to get into a little bit of the academic review next. So we do have a poll, and if we can get that up. Okay, so the next poll is, I would love to know what you think. How many minutes on average do admissions officers initially spend when they're reviewing that entire file? So you just saw all of those pieces that could go into an application. How long do you think they're going to actually spend on that?
And we've got about 44% saying somewhere between 6 to 10 minutes. We have about 33% saying less than 5, okay. And 16% saying 11 to 15, while the rest are saying at about 8%, 16 to 20.
Okay, and so the correct answer is actually that second, what was it, 6 to 10 minutes? That's actually the average. Okay, so think about that. You know, that is all they're going to take to look through all of that information. So you have not a very long time to make a lasting impression. Okay, so that's something that I think is important. And actually, I think, is there another poll, Anna, that is about what matters more in the college admissions process? Do you see that?
Yeah, we did. I have that ready.
Okay, we've got one too as well before I go over the next piece. So what do you think? And this is, we're going to talk about academic review. So when your application is being reviewed, what do you think matters more? The quality of your curriculum, okay, meaning the types of classes you're taking, the rigor of the classes, or your overall GPA?
Looks like we have about 90% saying the quality of your curriculum.
Oh, we have a smart group. We have a really smart group. Okay. So this is actually interesting because it's often, people will often say the opposite, okay? So, you know, it is absolutely not better, and if you want to actually go to the next slide about grades matter. So, yes, grades absolutely matter, okay? So when the National Association of College Admissions Counselors, they do an annual State of College Admissions report. So the last one that they did, right, 79% of colleges definitely consider grades a very important factor. But what is just as important, okay, if not more, when we're looking at the selective schools, is that students have an increasingly more rigorous curriculum and what's called an upward grade trend, okay? So the GPA matters, the test score matters, but I always tell people this who are applying to the UCs, you know, especially in these selective schools, that, you know, all 4.0s are not created equal, right? Equally. So you have to be really careful about, there's kind of a myth that it's better to get, you know, all A's than it is to maybe get a little bit of a lower grade in a more challenging class. So I'm telling you this now because you're in that back to school mode, and I will say that this is often when we get so many phone calls from students complaining that this class is going to be too hard for me, and I'm really worried that I'm not going to be able to get the A, and so I need to level down into an easier class. Or things like, I can already tell the teacher is going to be so hard. And my advice for you is to absolutely do your best to stick it out in the more rigorous class. If you can handle it, do what you can. We're going to talk about some different things that we can do to help you in order to get, you know, keep those grades up. But you want to make sure that you're showing that you can rise to the challenge, okay? So it's okay for you to get a B, even a high C, I would say, in some of the more rigorous classes, as opposed to just leveling down and taking an easier class. So in the academic review, when the college is looking at the transcript, they're going to evaluate all that. They're going to see, are you dropping classes mid-year? That's a huge red flag, and that's not something that you want to do, okay? Unless you're really doing poorly and it ends up affecting all your other classes, you want to be really careful about doing that. It just raises such a huge red flag. The second piece is the extracurricular review. If we can go to the next slide. Colleges want to see that you are absolutely going beyond grades, okay? And they want you to prove in high school what your potential contributions are going to be in college. So, you know, JFK is ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. You know, I use this reference and I say, well, you know, it's not necessarily what your college can do for you, but what are you going to be doing for the college? And in high school is when you're creating that case, okay? You're providing evidence that shows what you're gonna do when you're not in class. And we're gonna talk about this a little bit more in a minute. It's really important that you're not overextending yourself, and it's not about like how much you do, it's about being committed to one or two things and doing those things well. Okay, so that's what they're looking for when they're looking in the file, and we'll talk about this a little more when we go through the grade levels. The next piece is the personal review. Okay, so believe it or not, who you are as a person, being kind, good sense of humor, honest, respectful, independence, that actually does go into the admissions process. Okay, I'll never forget this. The director of admissions for Stanford, this was, I don't know, a few years back, he actually said this to a group of counselors in a room where someone said, what, you know, when all else is equal, what helps a student to get accepted? And he kind of laughed when he said it, but he said, hopefully it's a good kid. You know, it's someone that we actually want on our campus, in our classrooms. And that comes out in the recommendations. It comes out in the essay, that personality, The more selective the school, come on, you guys, they don't want all vanilla students at their school, right? They want that flavor. And so it's important that throughout high school, you are showing, what is your personality? And that's going to come out in recommendations, and it's really going to really jump off the page, and it could help you to jump, out of the stack into the acceptance pile. So those are pieces we're going to talk about as well, just being yourself. The next piece is that a college is looking at your overall fit, okay? So what is it that you have that a college really needs, okay? And this is the part that's a little bit tricky and can get frustrating, okay, as an applicant, honestly, because this changes. What a college is looking for year to year, especially the more selective the school, it can change year to year based on the interests of who's chirping in the admissions officer's ears. So one year, the classics department might need more students studying classics. And then the next year, they don't need that anymore because they got it the year before. So sometimes it is a moving target, okay? But what's important is that you're reading the college's mission statement, you're clearly demonstrating an interest in the school, you're visible throughout the process. We're gonna talk about this, especially when we talk about junior year advice, that you have to show that you are a good fit for the school and be visible throughout the process, because the worst thing that you can do, especially the smaller, more selective the school, the worst thing that you can do is go through this and be invisible, that they have no idea who you are until they pick up your application. So there's things that you can do to really show, off your candidacy and what you can offer a school, okay? What I wanna do now is I wanna get into the nitty-gritty sort of grade level advice and what you can really do from middle school throughout your senior year in order to be the most competitive applicant. So this is the nitty-gritty of the back to school guide. When we're looking at middle school, okay, so I know we don't have, right now we do have some parents, but maybe you have siblings, something to think about is that the middle school years are really about setting the stage, okay? So setting the stage for success, and that's where exploring your interests, this is the time when you can absolutely have your kid dabble. They can do a wide variety of things to really kind of explore where their passions are. That's not something necessarily that's going to be a great idea after sophomore year of high school. So now's the time to really figure out what it is you're interested in, and whether it's, volunteering or, different hobbies or interests. And I would say that, to have a real clear passion when you're 12 or 13 years old is pretty rare. And so now's the time as a parent when you can really maybe take students to volunteer in different places, to explore whether they like working with the elderly, or they like working with children, or the homeless, or the environment. You can kind of help them to understand volunteerism, and so that before they actually pick something that they're going to do for a while, or to get deeper into, that now's the time for you to kind of start doing that. I would also say that because middle school is laying the groundwork, now's the time where really I have sort of that last check is knowing your rights. And what I mean by that is you absolutely as the parent are the student's best advocate, where if your student isn't able to get into more accelerated classes because they barely missed a prerequisite or something, now's the time for you to really help the student to maybe push into those classes, because it does lay the groundwork for AP and honors classes later. I recommend starting to level up when you're in 8th grade, and that way you can get a taste for an accelerated class. Another piece for setting the stage for success is really encouraging your student to advocate for himself and to go into a teacher for help. I'm always surprised when I work with juniors sometimes that have such a hard time communicating with the teacher when they feel there's been a misunderstanding, or they didn't understand something on a test and they just sort of sat there and walked out of class. And really helping that student to advocate and to speak up, those are huge skills that are not only going to help in high school but in life. And so that's kind of the middle school focus for building your case. The next poll, right ahead of us talking about freshman year, I want to know what you think, whether or not freshman year grades matter in the college admissions process. Yes or no?
We have 85% coming in at yes. Yes,
okay.
Freshman grades do matter.
Okay, and so going to the next slide. they absolutely do. Okay, so you got this right. Again, we've got a great group here. You know, it's interesting because a lot of the public universities don't actually use the freshman GPA when they're looking at whether or not a student's get accepted. So they don't really use that for admission. They don't use that in the comprehensive GPA calculation. And so, I know, like the UCs, for example, they don't. Freshman grades don't matter. The actual GPA doesn't matter. But what you have to remember is that absolutely those grades are going to lay the foundation, right, for what's going to happen later for enrollment into advanced classes. So it absolutely matters. And colleges are looking holistically at an upward grade trend. They're looking at you taking more rigorous courses and getting higher grades in those rigorous courses. So they definitely matter. Making sure that in your freshman year, you're focusing on the grades, practicing your study skills, possibly taking any subject tests if you're taking any AP classes freshman year or accelerated classes that correspond with a subject test. That's also, I always have to tell people that to remember. You know, if you're in an AP World History class, there's a World History subject test that goes along with it, and it's always a good idea to take that. So I do recommend that. And freshman year is still that time when you can get to know your school, get to know your community. You can still be dabbling a little bit. And then we end up, you know, going into the later years, and you're feeling like you can now commit, and you can really show consistency. Because grades matter so much, I will say this, we have, if you want to go to the next slide, we have an excellent program that we want to make sure you know about. We do have a homework help program, and it's basically, if you want to go to the next slide, Anna, it's on-demand tutoring. This is a tremendous opportunity for you. I know that with my own daughter, okay, there's times when she gets home at 9 o'clock at night from her athletics, and she goes to open her math book and, you know, wants to just absolutely break down because it is a challenging assignment that she can't figure out. And I'll say that our homework help, it is available 24/7, okay, in 40+ subjects, and it's on-demand tutoring. So if you have a question and it's, you know, 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, you can actually log in to get help from a tutor. If you end up, you know, really clicking with that tutor, you can actually pre-schedule sessions later. We have a free program that you can try if you hop online and you go to that site, princetonreview.com. You can actually get a free session if you want to try it, but it's an incredible low-cost opportunity for you to get on-demand tutoring because the grades matter so much. So I want to make sure that you definitely know about that, and you know that can be started at any time. For the next slide, for the sophomores, once we get to that, this is where you are hopefully really rising to the challenge, right? So this is the time when you should be developing your intellectual curiosity. And what I mean by that is you're exploring areas outside of the classroom that have to do with your academics, okay? So for example, if you're enrolled in AP European History, okay, as a sophomore, which is a very common sophomore class, or world history, and you know there's something that is really interesting to you, then maybe you go to the bookstore, you go to the library, you check out some more information about that topic that you're really interested in. Those kinds of experiences will come into play in your activities list when you're applying to college, because if you're deepening your intellectual interest outside of class, it's something that you can talk about, you can describe it. You can actually have as one of your activities that you're an avid reader, and you can start listing out different books and things that are, you know, academic in nature that connect to an academic interest. So I really encourage sophomores to start to like feed that intellectual curiosity. This is the time when you also want to really, I mean, you always want to do this, right? You want to be on your teacher's good side, but you want to be developing positive relationships with your teachers, getting to know your high school counselor. So it's not just about, hey, you know, I need to get out of this class or get into this class. You want to make sure that they are getting to know you as a person. I recommend you're staying committed at this point to a couple of activities that you really enjoy, that you're not spreading yourself too thin, okay? And that is a huge mistake that sophomores and later make, that you have to remember that colleges want to see that you are a student first, okay? They want to know that if they accept you and you decide to go there, that you're not going to drop out after a year because you couldn't handle it. So they want to know that you're going to go there, you're going to do well, you're not going to be on academic probation, you're going to really thrive in that academic environment. And so if you're a student that you're just overextended and your grades suffer because of it, you're not going to present a very strong case that you're going to do well on that campus. So it's important to be balanced. Pick a couple of activities that you really do well. After sophomore year is when I tell people stop dabbling. Okay, it's actually after freshman year. I say stop dabbling. Pick a couple things that you really like and show that you are a committed person. Okay, and then the other piece of sophomore year is also to make sure you're taking any appropriate subject tests again that correspond with a more accelerated class. You always want to take subject tests, and I know they're not required. For a lot of schools don't have them, but it could be icing on the cake for some schools if you sort of show that you're capable of doing well on these exams. That you always want to take the subject test as close to the end of that class as possible. Okay, so I know that there are actually a lot of sophomores, for example, that take pre-calculus. Well, pre-calculus corresponds with the Math 2 subject test. And so I always recommend, like, right after you take pre-calculus or towards the end of that class, that's when you should be taking your Math 2 test. Don't wait till calculus or later because you will have forgotten that material. Okay, so that's sort of a tip for students that start in Algebra 2 as freshmen. Those are accelerated math students. It's important that you do that. Okay, so that's sophomore. So now we're going to get into junior year. So this is the big one. I think we said almost a quarter of you or more are actually juniors. I think it was more than that. So junior year, as you know, can be very stressful, okay? And so it's important that you're pacing yourself and you really want to think about designing your college admissions plan, okay? This is something that we do, okay? We work with you on a one-on-one basis. We have college admissions counselors that this is what they do for a living, right? They sit here and they're going to help you with your college admissions plan. To make sure that you're not missing any steps that are really important. You don't want to wait too long to get organized for college admissions, okay? Most importantly is obviously that you are, if possible, you're leveling up and you're participating in AP, honors, IB classes, whatever is available at your school, okay? I want to say that you will never be punished for not taking AP classes if it's not offered at your school. Okay, so what a college is going to do is they are going to receive from your school a school profile from your high school. And in that profile, it's going to list the AP classes, the IB classes that are available at your school. Usually it has the percentage of students that are enrolled in those types of classes at your school. And then they're going to look at your transcript and they're going to say, okay, so what is the student taking advantage of or not taking advantage of that's been offered at their school? And if they're not taking advantage of it, why, right? So if your school offers 24 AP classes in different subject areas, how many are you taking advantage of? The more selective the college you're applying to, the more that's gonna matter, okay? So if you only take 2 AP classes and your school, you easily had room, you know, or the ability to take 10, okay, that could hurt you the more selective the school you're looking at, okay? You want to make sure you're creating a very personalized test prep and testing plan. Again, that is something we help you with. Our enrollment advisors do that when they're helping to create your test prep, or they'll talk you through that. Our college admissions counselors do it in even more of a detailed way. But now's the time to make sure that you have an actual clear plan, that you're testing when you know it's right for you as far as your extracurricular activities, as far as your academic preparation, that you want to map that out so you're not waiting until, you know, the very end of your junior year to take all your tests. That can get very stressful. So we really believe in pacing. We'll talk about the test prep plan in a minute. This is absolutely where you have to show that you know how to balance between schoolwork and extracurricular. Okay, so believe it or not, colleges are going to look at your first semester junior year grades and your second semester junior year grades, and they're going to analyze what your stamina is like. You know, are you somewhere in that first semester you really do well, and then second semester you just sort of lose steam? They're going to look for that balance, and that could matter in the process. I'll never forget this. I had a student that every second semester, when you look at their grades, their GPA was always significantly lower. And then you look deeper as an admissions officer and you see that that's when they played basketball, okay? or when they were finishing up that season. And college, remember, they want students first. And so you have to show that you can balance and handle it and you're not spreading yourself too thin, okay? Take the most challenging courses that are available, but don't go overboard, okay? So you're at the beginning of your year. You're all, you know, either a weekend or a couple days in, maybe a little bit longer to your junior year. If you get to the point a month in and you're overwhelmed and you have classes that you maybe can level down in, okay, where it's gonna help to make you feel more balanced, then maybe that is a time for you to level down a week or two into the semester when you still have the time. But you wanna remember that colleges want you to rise to the challenge, but not overwhelm. Don't go to that state of overwhelm. That's not gonna help anybody. If you're taking a calculus class as a junior, that's killing all of your other grades, that's never a good idea. So you have to sort of figure out what that balance is. We recommend that you take the PSAT in October so you can qualify for National Merit Scholarship. It's also, since that's so hard to get, it's also a great opportunity for you to actually take a test in a setting that's very similar to what you'd actually really take it in. Okay, so we recommend you definitely take the PSAT. And this is the year when you need to develop very good relationships with your teachers. So what we always tell our juniors is make sure that you are figuring out the 2 to 3, usually 2, academic teachers that you connect with and that you build that relationship with them in the junior year, because come senior year, you're gonna go back to those junior year teachers and you're gonna ask for letters of recommendation. Junior year teachers are the best teachers to write those letters of recommendation. So start now. You're right at the beginning. Decide who it is that you really want to get to know, and that you know, you're communicating with them, you're participating in class, because those recommendations, the more selected the school, the more those recs are going to matter. Your junior year is also when you should be developing your college list. You should be visiting college campuses when they are in full session. Okay, I am not a believer that summer college visits are a good idea unless it is absolutely your only time to visit colleges. It is very difficult for you to get a good sense for what's happening on that campus if you go over the summer. So, excuse me, so I recommend that as parents, you know, you look at your calendar for junior year, you look at those days off that your student has, you look at spring break. Some of you have that whole week of Thanksgiving off where the beginning part, colleges are still in session. So look at your academic calendar for your high school, compare it to the academic calendar of the college that you might be interested in. And then that way you can start to build a college list that really makes sense, get to know what you're looking for in a campus, and all of that's really gonna help you, okay? It's the time to also start thinking again about letters of recommendation towards the end of the year, like we talked about. Okay, next one. Okay, so this is, I'm not gonna go over all the details in this because you could read it, so I wanna give you kind of a minute to, excuse me, to kind of check this out. But for testing, what we recommend for juniors is, you know, summer's already passed. Hopefully you've done a little bit of prep if you're taking the test. Maybe some of you might have actually taken the summer test. But, you know, starting to prep now, taking the PSAT. We usually recommend that you're taking the test a couple of times. You definitely don't need to take the SAT and the ACT twice. You know, that's not normally advice that we're going to give, but you know, we usually suggest that you do take both of the tests, the SAT and the ACT. We don't recommend taking tests cold, okay? We recommend that, you know, because it's sort of a waste of time. So you want to prep, you can take the exams, and then you sort of see which one you do better at, and then you can do more targeted prep towards the test that you're the most comfortable with. Just as a reminder, colleges will accept both the SAT and the ACT equally. Okay, so it's not a big deal if you're better at one over the other. And we also recommend that you do take subject tests if you're in those AP classes, that you take subject tests that correspond with the, you know, that go with the corresponding subject as close to the end of the year as possible. So if you're looking at that whole calendar, May is when AP exams are taking place, so some students like to, prep for the APs and take the subject tests, back to back, and that way the information's all fresh. And then, in June, they might take an SAT or something to kind of close it out. The best thing that you can do, advice I always give students, is if you're ready, take the tests junior year early, retake them in the spring, and hopefully you'll be done. So that way you don't have to keep testing into your senior year, okay? Because it's so nice just to have your summer where you're working on applications, early fall, you're finishing applications as seniors, and you're done with testing. But of course, you can absolutely test, just so you know, all the way until usually December of your senior year for testing, but it's sort of nice to have them all done, okay? So that's kind of our overview as what to take when for testing. And so now we're on to senior year. I think we said we have about 25% of you are seniors. So you are in the thick of it right now. And you are less than 60 days away from early deadlines. Okay, so November 1st marks usually the early action or early decision deadlines for some colleges. So hopefully you have started to draft your essays. You know where you're applying, and you have your college list done, and you've come up with an application plan and a strategy. We do this really well, okay? Our college admissions counselors are former admissions officers from selective colleges, and they have a great deal of experience working with students. If you work with us, we have both a college admissions counselor, like I just described, and a coach that's also assigned to you together that's gonna help to sort of manage you. There are project managers, and you work with both of them throughout the process in order to get your essays drafted, prior to that, obviously, coming up with really great topics, strategizing where you're gonna apply when, all the way through the submission process to make sure you are submitting the best possible applications. You want to start working on these now. Colleges have already started accepting applications for rolling admission. They've already been accepting students, and so it's important that you work on that. Those essays always take longer than you think. I always recommend 3 drafts, that you're going through that rough draft and then getting some feedback, and then continuing through the process all the way to the final. It's usually a minimum of 3 drafts, okay, to get it right. You want to have a personalized calendar to make sure that you stay on track. I recommend you have it on your phone or your computer or something, and then parents, you also put it in a public place. So that way your student really knows what they need to do when. As far as early, this is sort of the advice that we give students for early applications. So it's kind of a myth so early action is by November 1st usually, or 15th, depending on the college's deadline. Not all colleges offer early, but many do. If you apply early, and you find out, right around the holidays whether or not you get in, or you might get deferred to the regular round. Some colleges will reject in the early round, but we really believe that applying early is a benefit, okay, to the student, unless you really, really struggled the end of your junior year and you had a downward grade trend. Then you might not be a great candidate for early, because they're going to want to see how you do your first semester senior year. But we do recommend getting your application in early, because if you end up getting deferred to the regular round, you actually can submit different essays sometimes. You can actually add to your application file more recommendations. And the beauty of it is now you actually get another read by an admissions officer. So we do recommend that you try to get applications in as early as possible. If there's an early action deadline and you're a strong candidate, that we definitely recommend that you do that. Usually your last SAT and ACT, if you're applying regular decision, is going to be by December. Okay, so you can actually test all the way through that month. And I'll tell you this now, even though it's our back to school guide, just thinking about the end of the year, make sure that you keep that senioritis under control. Okay, so parents, I'm saying this to you. So if you have a student come January, they tell you that they want to drop a class or they want to level down, okay, because hey, they already got into whatever college, or they're just over it and done, stand firm. Okay, you really, really want to make sure that you keep the classes that you're enrolled in at the beginning all the way through to the end. Okay, that's important. And colleges do not like it when you level down in the middle of the year or drop a class, because remember, when you do your applications, you're going to list what your senior classes are. And so they are going to expect that those classes are going to look the same. Okay, when they get your final transcript and they see the grades, they're going to want to look to see that those classes are still on there. Okay, so it's really important. And acceptance letters start to roll in anywhere from now, but usually the big hit is March and April is when they come in. So you have to be really patient, making sure that you go through the process, get your application finished and done, and you know, turn it in, and then focus on your grades and the rest of your senior year. We can go to the next one. So that's kind of, you know, an overview. I know we have lots of questions, and I'm going to have Anna in a minute. We're going to start to answer them, but just so you know, I want to tell you a little bit more about our college admission services. So I believe we have mostly sophomores through seniors that are in this webinar. So I'll just tell you that we work with students in a wide variety of capacities. Our admissions experts have worked at top colleges around the country. They are very adept in making sure you are building the absolute strongest case for admission. We have former admissions officers that work with us from MIT, Harvard, Duke, Stanford. That selective college experience will absolutely give you an edge because they've worked on that side of the desk and they know what it takes to get in. They know what a fabulous essay is like. They know what a horrible essay is like. So we absolutely have that. And like I said before, you also have a dedicated college coach. We have a couple different options for seniors. We also have an application and essay review package that just focuses on the application, where you have a brainstorming session with a counselor, and then you work through the editing process with them for the revisions. And that's, you know, kind of one of our really targeted packages that we have. We also offer hourly counseling. So if you want to just have your list reviewed to make sure, you know, to look at admissibility, check out to make sure you're not maybe applying way over your head, your counselor can go ahead and review that with you. We do that on an hourly basis. For juniors, we have a very comprehensive package that will go all the way through from the college research and selection process all the way through to the final submission. And for sophomores, we have a targeted package that's just for sophomore year. That's going to help with class selection. It's going to help with building your resume, getting started on some college research, understanding your academic area of interest. So we really kind of hit you wherever you are. We do offer a free admissions consultation, and it's with one of our enrollment advisor experts, and there's a phone number there if you want to call on that. We actually also have a poll now, so that way we know if you want to kind of put that up. If you're interested in this free admissions consultation, if you can click the box, yes or no. We'll make sure that you're contacted as soon as possible by one of our enrollment advisors so we can kind of get you in on that. It's a 45-minute consultation. You can ask a lot of questions. They'll tell you about our service as well for different information. So what we're going to do now is I think we've got a lot of questions. So we'll probably take the next 10 or so minutes to answer questions. If I don't get to your question, we'll make sure that someone from our college admissions team does reach out to you, so that way you can get it answered. And if you ask something that I'm not sure about, then I will say I don't know, and I'll make sure that we get the information to you. So Anna, what you got?
Yeah, so we had a lot of questions come in. So let's see. Could you actually just explain the differences between early action and early decision? I know we touched upon that briefly, Absolutely. But let's just clarify that for a few folks on the line.
Okay, great. So, so first of all, remember, not all colleges are going to offer all of these plans, okay? So early action versus early decision. So early action it depends on the deadline. It's usually right around November 1st. It's different for the schools. Every school has its own deadline for this. But if you apply by that November 1st or whatever that deadline is, you have all of your information in, you meet the deadline, your application is reviewed, and you get a decision usually by the holidays, and that decision is going to be either you got in, you didn't get in, or they're deferring you to the regular round. If you get in, congratulations, you can put that in your back pocket and you move on, okay? You can still apply anywhere else you want. You can apply regular decision. You can apply all over the place, and it's no big deal. If you are applying early decision, which usually has the same deadline around November 1st or so, you apply to that school early decision. You may only apply to that school early decision, but you can still apply early action, often to other schools. You can apply regular decision to other schools. Same thing. You get the decision back over the holidays, okay, right around that time. Again, you either get in, you don't get in, or you get deferred. But if you get in, you have to go to that school, okay? So you have to, at that point, withdraw all of your applications that you have put out to other schools, okay? And you're not allowed to keep applying to other schools. You actually have to sign an early decision agreement that shows that you know that rule. Your counselor also signs, and usually your parent, okay? So it's the real deal. Why is it a good thing sometimes to apply early decision? Well, first of all, you only use your early decision card, your ED card, you only use that if you are 100% sure that you love that school. Because if you get in, you have to go, okay? But colleges use it, and sometimes there are some colleges that almost half of their freshman class is filled up with people that they sort of clinched in the early round. It can be to your benefit, okay? If you're a really strong applicant, it just shows that you're really serious about going to that school, and the college knows that now they have somebody with that high GPA, test scores, that profile, someone that they really want, also wants them. And so it's kind of a card that you can use in the process.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. All right. A few of the questions that came in were around recommendation letters, and asking if it was really junior year teachers that they should be asking, or can it be teachers from freshman and sophomore year? What is your recommendation again regarding recommendation letters?
So this is interesting. So it kind of depends. I would say for the most part, rule of thumb, get junior year teachers, okay? Because a freshman year teacher, like you were 14 years old, okay? So you're 18 when you apply, 17 when you apply. Who you were as a freshman, hopefully you've grown up a little bit, right? You're a little bit different, maybe more academic. And so I would say freshman year is a little bit strange. I usually, tell students that you really don't even want sophomore year teachers unless you don't have great junior year teachers that you feel are going to write you a strong recommendation. Now, with that though, if you're at a smaller school, especially like a smaller private school where your freshman year teacher then had you again junior year, that's fine. Or you have a senior year teacher that also had you sophomore year, that's fine. But for the most part, it's, the best indicator of who you are as a student is whatever you were like in your junior year. I think it looks a little funny when you don't have any junior year teachers, because it's like, well, what happened junior year? What did you do in your junior year classes where your teachers didn't want to write you a recommendation? I think that's a red flag. So I usually recommend junior year teachers first, then sophomore, and if not, then someone in, and also I would say different subject areas are really important. If you're going to declare a major in a math or a science, try to have that teacher also write a recommendation. I recommend the foundational subject areas before like an art teacher, unless you're majoring in art. So, keep it academic. We often hear, what about a community leader or someone I worked for? That would maybe be a college that would accept, 4 letters of recommendation or something, and that's like your 4th letter. The way the recommendation form works, it's a very academic type of form. And you can look at those. You can just pull those up online and look at what the teachers are being asked. And it would be odd if it was like a coach or an employer or something. It needs to be an academic letter.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Another question, actually a few questions did come in around the college essay, and so I'm going to give you 2 questions as one. What are colleges really looking for in a college essay, and is there such a thing as writing too much?
As what too much?
As writing too much on your college essay, or adding too much detail in your college essay?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so all right, so when you think of the essay, one thing that you want to remember is that It's your opportunity to provide different or new information than is readily available in your application. So one of the biggest mistakes that students make is they just like list out something that was in their activities. You know, they talk in detail about a cross-country meet or something that they're at, where that's not going to be very helpful. So one of the most important pieces when you're thinking of the college essay is that you being vulnerable and you being open and being willing to share a side of yourself that maybe is a bit more of a risk, okay, is actually a good thing, okay? It's a good thing because colleges know that you're human, and they want to also know that you learn from your mistakes, that you've overcome obstacles, and so it's an opportunity for you to talk about a side of yourself that maybe isn't going to be in an application. You have to remember that, you know, nobody's perfect, right? And so I always tell students this, that writing about, you know, an achievement and why you're so amazing and successful is not going to be as interesting as writing about a failure and how you overcame it and what you learned from it. And I'll say that for the Common Application, when you look at the prompts and what they've done this year, because they've changed some of it and they added some prompts, when you look at that, you know, there's a question about failure, there's a question about obstacles, something about your background that, you know, it would just be, your application would be just empty without talking about it. They want you to take a risk and they want you to be a little bit vulnerable, okay? With that, you can't write a sob story, okay? Because it's not about the sob, right? It's about the lesson and how you overcame it. But being yourself in the essay, making sure it doesn't have too many hands on it before it's submitted is really important. That's why, I mean, our service, we have you know, we have an essay editing service. We have a service where you're working with the college admissions counselor that I was telling you about. We're really, really good at making sure that it's still your voice, it's your writing, that we're really just helping you to come up with a topic that really just screams who you are. And you have to be really careful about that. There's essay editing services out there that are going to over polish. And it's one of the biggest complaints that admissions officers say is that the essay sounds maybe too sophisticated. I always laugh. I had a student, he was a 17-year-old boy who wrote an essay, and I read the draft, and it was like a 45-year-old woman wrote the essay, you know, and so if I can see through it, you know that they can see through it as well. And so you want to be yourself, pick a topic that's meaningful to you, not necessarily a topic that's meaningful to your parents. It's one that is really, it just says who you are. It's a statement of you and your personality.
Thank you. All right, another question. Do colleges consider AP classes more challenging than, say, community college courses?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a great question. Okay, so so this is interesting because at least where I am in California, I'll say that in a lot of areas, the community college classes are actually easier than the AP classes. You know, I haven't necessarily heard anything directly from admissions officers, and I think it also depends on the system that you're applying to. I know, like the UCs, for example, they really like community college classes because it actually, you get, you know, an extra bump in your GPA for it. They see that you're actually, you know, with students that are older in your class, and they like that. They like that you're rising to the challenge. The AP classes are challenging, and what I would say is that you don't want to replace an AP class with a community college class. You know, I have a lot of students that try to do that, for example, with history, where, oh, I don't want to take AP US history at my school, so I'm going to take US history through the community college. And then they try to take an exam, like a US history subject test, just to prove that they really got the material. And quite frankly, they don't do as well on that US history subject test as the ones that took AP US history. So, you know, be careful about what you pick and choose. My advice is normally that if you're going to take a community college class, it doesn't replace the AP class. It's maybe something in addition. So maybe you're interested in anthropology, and there isn't an anthropology class on your campus, so you would take it at a community college, or an intro to business class or something like that. But don't replace the APs with that. It sort of looks like you're trying to take the easy way out, honestly.
Great, thank you. And it looks like we're just at the 9 o'clock hour, so Lisa, if it's okay with you, let's take one more question. I want to be considerate of everyone's time. As Lisa mentioned earlier in the evening, we will be able to send you guys all answers to your questions from this evening that you have submitted. So just don't worry, we'll absolutely make sure that you get your answers. But let us take one more question. And Lisa, this question is it better to tell a college you intend to major in a subject you think you might like, but are not sure, or just say you're undecided? Does that help at all with your application?
Oh, that's good. Okay, so I'll say that most colleges really don't use the declared major when they're deciding whether or not to admit you. Okay, so most often, and there are exceptions, and I'll tell you that in a minute. But the advice that we give is this: if you are a student that you clearly want to major in something, okay, so for example, you clearly want to major in engineering, okay, and when you think about why that's an academic area of interest, you have some proof, okay, and evidence that shows that you're going to be good at it, okay, meaning maybe you've read some things outside of school. You, in your physics class, you realized that, you know, engineering was interesting to you. Maybe you did something over the summer in an exploratory engineering program. You have a GPA that is going to be more competitive for admission because, you know, engineering is really often an impacted major at schools. Then yeah, declare it. Okay, there's no reason not to, because it seems like you're prepared. But if you're sort of like in between, where you're not sure if you want to do engineering and you might also want to study biology, or you might want to do philosophy as well, you know, you really do have that indecision in your mind, then there's no harm in you saying that you are clearly undecided. What I'll say though is that a lot of colleges, the more selective schools, this is really true, you can still put undecided in your application. You click that you're undecided or undeclared, but they're still going to say, what are some academic areas of interest? You know, where, because they still want to know, are you more English history? Are you more math science? Like, where are you going to land? And you have to still explain where that interest came from and why you're thinking of going there. So I always tell students, if you're undecided, you're undecided. Don't force the decision, okay? But be careful if it's an impacted major and you're undecided, because then you're just hurting yourself, okay? So engineering, nursing, psychology at some schools, those are impacted majors. So if you're undecided and those are sort of in there, then you want to make sure that you are leaving it open so colleges know that you have lots of different interests and you're not just going to like pigeonhole into that one, okay? So thank you all so much. I'll have Anna close it off. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, our next one is going to be the first Tuesday in October. I believe the focus is going to be extracurriculars. You will have to re-register. And apologize at the beginning for what was going on with the screen, but we'll have Anna go ahead and close up.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise. Everyone on the line, thank you for joining us this evening. As a reminder, you will get a recording of this session about 24 to 48 hours after we close it out this evening. And definitely go ahead and check out our webinar schedule at our website at princetonreview.com/webinars. You'll find all of our future sessions scheduled right there. And for those of you that have said yes to an admissions consultation, our team will be in touch with you as soon as possible. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great evening.